Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol reveal breakdown. I'm coming to this one a little bit late. These reveals technically came out yesterday, but now they're up on Jarvis, so I can give some kind of nicer look at these new cards that were revealed. So we have 7 cards coming with the Web Warriors and Spider Foes box that have been revealed. Obviously, we already knew Venomized was coming, so there's actually 8, but 7 new ones that we didn't know about until today. So I'm really, really excited to kind of dive into these, take a look at them, talk about where they might be useful, and get your guys' thoughts on them because I think some of them are really, really interesting. So we're going to go ahead and start out with the affiliated ones here. Most of them are affiliated cards. There is one that is not. And let's go ahead and start at the bottom here with probably one of my favorites of the new set, Surprise Webhead. So Surprise Webhead is a Spider Foes card. Any number of allied Spider Foes characters may spend 2 power each to play this card. Choose an enemy character. Each character that's spent power may immediately perform an attack with a power cost of 0, targeting the chosen character. So I really like this card thematically, and I think it's probably a very, very solid card. Basically, it's like Siege of Darkness or Wakanda Forever, except it has the higher power cost of Siege of Darkness, and it has the extra restriction of you have to target the same character with all of the attacks that you're making. So that's definitely something that you're going to have to keep in mind with this card, is it's not quite as versatile or powerful as those other 2 cards that are very, very similar. One of my locals referred to this card as Siege U in particular, which I think is hilarious and totally on brand for the Spider Foes. We'd had conversations before in my local group about like, oh, it would be cool if Spider Foes get a card where they just all beat up Peter Parker for a round, and this is kind of that. So I think that's amazing. Um, it's a really solid card, though. I think there's a lot of things you can do with it. Some characters like Mysterio can help you get a little bit further reach with this because you use Mysterio's attack and then you get to advance the target character, and now suddenly someone else is in range. Keep in mind you have to kind of expect that you're going to get that advance though, because you have to pay power for all of them at the same time. So that's a little bit of a downside to that. But then we have some other characters like Craven, who gets benefits for attacking multiple times. So this can potentially let him output really, really high, especially if it's his activation. And a few other interesting ones. You've got some control on a few characters and a few things like Rhino can place off of this. So tons of really interesting things you could do with this card with the models available in Spider Foes. And yeah, I think this is a really, really solid card. Obviously, it is out of, between Siege, Wakanda Forever, and Surprise Webhead. This is probably the weakest of the group, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And I think it's totally okay for some cards to be weaker or stronger versions of each other if they're affiliation locked. I think that's actually probably good for game balance. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting first card. The second card we have here is also probably really, really good. It's called Strategic Retreat. So this is another Spider Foes card. When an allied Spider Foes character is targeted by an attack, if it is holding 1 or more objective tokens, it may spend 4 power to play this card. Choose another allied character within 3 of the character that played this card. Move 1 objective token from the character that played this card to the chosen character. That character is now holding the objective token. This card does not allow a character to hold more tokens than the crisis specifies, as usual, and then the character that played this card advances small away from the attacking character. So there's a couple really, really important things to note with this card. I do think it's very good, but it's somewhat limited. At first read, it sounds like it might even be better than it actually is. But so first of all, the mission objective part, that's great. Yeah, within 3 as well, so not even limited to range 2, like I believe mission objective is. That's really, really good. It's 4 costs, so it's a little expensive, but being able to pass off your thing before you get hit is fantastic. What's really important is the advanced small away part. So this still happens before the attack is made, before the dice are rolled. However, it doesn't recheck line of sight or range. So really, really important to acknowledge that you're walking away from the enemy character, but even if that puts you out of range, because the attack's already been declared and because it's not specifically telling you to check again, like something like Escort to Safety would, you do still take the attack. Now, that in mind, you could totally pair this with Escort to Safety to basically get two small moves away from your opponent and then recheck line of sight, which could be really, really good if one Escort to Safety wasn't enough. Mind you, that means the character being targeted is spending 4 power and then somebody else is paying 3 to Escort to Safety, so it becomes quite expensive, but still, in the right situation, definitely could be worth doing. So, really, really good card. Mission objective, mobility, everything on here is great. Just definitely something you want to kind of keep in mind with this card that it does have limitations. It's not, it's not escort to safety combined with the mission objective. It's closer to fallback combined with mission objective. So that's just worth kind of acknowledging here, but still a really good card, I think, and definitely useful for foes to have in their arsenal. The next new card available here is Masked Menace. This is our first Web Warriors card we're taking a look at. So this one says, during the power phase, up to 3 allied Web Warriors may spend 1 power each to play this card. For each character that played this card, place a camera token onto the battlefield, not within range 3 of another camera. While within range 3 of a camera token, allied characters gain 1 additional power when they deal damage to an enemy character with an attack or superpower. Remove all camera tokens from the battlefield during the next cleanup phase. So yeah, this is really solid, I think. In a more kind of attrition-y focused Web Warriors, I think this card's going to be really valuable because you're going to be going all out trying to do more damage. It's been talked about, and obviously this can't be confirmed yet because the card isn't actually released yet. But if you do something like throw a character at another character, that is technically 2 damage being caused by your superpower, so you gain 2 power from that most likely. Similarly, if you throw like a beam attack or something like that, you can potentially gain a lot of power from that. Now, it is specifically from an attack or superpower, so it's going to be kind of hard to say where that line gets drawn. For example, if Miles makes a web line kick, he does damage on the 6 dicer, great, so he'll gain 1 for that. But then he gets the throw, and now he throws that character at another character. So the first character that he threw isn't the damage isn't really coming from the attack anymore. It's coming from a trigger off of the attack. So I know a lot of things wouldn't count that. And then more so now the next character taking damage by having a character thrown at them is definitely not taking damage from the attack. They're taking damage from a character being thrown at them. But then you run into that same thing with what if you just have a throw superpower? So there's going to be some gray areas with this card that are definitely going to need to be rules forums questions, and we'll see exactly what applies. But in general, I do think this is quite a solid card, especially when you do have some Web Warriors with beams, notably Agent Venom. Again, jury's still out on whether or not his trigger would affect this, because I don't think it would. For a lot of abilities, it wouldn't. But definitely worth taking a look at, because I think he could potentially gain a lot of power out of this. I mean, you beam 3 models and get 3 power back. That feels pretty good to me. So yeah, I think there's some really, really valuable things with this card. Definitely for more of an attrition-y playstyle, but I even think they're more traditional objective playstyle. Being able to kind of use this to get your web swings online a little bit more frequently when you're making attacks and things like that could be really, really good. So yeah, I think this is a solid card. I don't think it's going to be an every game card for webs or anything like that, but it's certainly a solid tool to have. Next, we are back to the foes with founding members. So this card I both love and hate, so we'll get into it. It's Spider Foes, and you play it during the power phase. Any Spider Foes character may play this card. Not going to cost you any power, so that's good. During this round, each time an enemy character suffers damage from an allied effect, choose up to one of the listed allied characters that is within range 2 of the enemy character. The enemy character gains the special condition shown below corresponding to the chosen allied character. So then every one of these characters, the founding members, are going to give a different condition. Sandman's giving slow, Vulture is bleed, Mysterio is hex, Otto is stun, Electro is shock, and Craven is poison. I think this is really good for some of these guys because they can't give out those conditions normally otherwise. So having kind of that extra condition that you didn't even have access to before is really, really cool. The fact that you could potentially get this multiple times in the round, it's anytime they suffer damage from any allied effect, so you can do some really cool things with that. You can also use allied effects that like place you or move them, to help get into position for those types of things. I think Mysterio will be particularly good for that between tricks and traps triggering it, and then he's got an advance on his attack. So I think that's going to be really, really solid. Um, it's interesting that it says when they suffer damage, so after the effect is resolved, things actually don't happen at that point in time. It's weird because it's kind of actually vague on the timing on this, but that means Mysterio's actual attack and tricks and traps won't actually help him get into position for it. But still, there are more ways he can deal damage. And yeah, if you have characters that have before the attack is resolved or like before damage is dealt, like I think Rhino's places before damage is dealt, um, that doesn't actually do anything because Rhino's not on this card, but um, there are some small things like that that might be relevant that I just haven't seen yet. The one kind of annoying thing about this card is unless you're running 3-threat Doc Ock, and it is Auto Octavius, so you can run either with this card, but unless you're running 3-threat Doc Ock, this list would be 21 threat, and if you are running 3-threat Doc Ock, it's 20 threat, but you don't have a leader, which feels kind of bad, because I think one round of a handful of easier conditions is probably not quite equivalent to a leadership, especially not Doc Ock's leadership. So that's a bit of a shame that this is kind of an impossible list to run in a like moderately competitive setting. Um, that's mildly disappointing, but it's still a really cool card. I just wish you could do it at 20 threat. That would be really cool. But no, unfortunately not. So do note though that you don't need to have all of these models on the table to play the card. So you could totally play this card with just Awk on the table if you wanted, and just have some easier access to stun, or any combination of these models. So still a really cool card, really fluffy card as well. I'm definitely down with it. I'm just a little disappointed that the threats don't quite work out, but that's not really a problem with the card. It's more of a problem with just the threats they decided to make all these characters. So can't really complain there. Next, we have custom upgrades. So this is interesting because this is basically a card that already existed and has just been rotated, and that is Blind Obsession. So at the start of an activation phase, or the activation phase rather, an allied Spider Foes character may spend 2 power to play this card. Choose an enemy character. That character that played this card gains singular focus. The character that played this card loses singular focus when the chosen character is KO'd. Singular focus says you add 2 dice to your attack rolls when targeting them. When you roll defense dice, if they are the attacker, you add 2 dice to your defense roll. So you basically get a 2 dice buff any interaction you have with them for the most part. And then when you roll defense dice, if the chosen character is not the one attacking you, you remove 2 defense dice from your roll. So that's going to be really, really important. There's obviously a huge downside to that. It makes you a lot squishier against a lot of other models on the table. Still, I think it's a really interesting card. There might be a handful of models where it's probably good on. I mean, one of the first thoughts for me is Carnage, where he's rolling 1 die on defense on 2 sides anyways. But you don't love hitting his physical, so maybe. But still, I think it's a really fun card and definitely thematic for the Spider Foes to just kind of be like, Spider-Man needs to die. We're going to throw everything at him. So, between this and Surprise Webhead, I think we're getting some really cool thematic cards for the foes here. So I definitely can't complain about that. And yeah, I think it's probably at least a half decent card with the right models. You just have to be careful, know when to play it, that sort of thing. But it's solid. It seems fun, and I'm definitely down for stuff like that. Next, we have probably, in my opinion, the most disappointing card in the sets. Now, this card isn't necessarily terrible or anything like that, but it's called Clone Saga, and I wanted so much more from a card called Clone Saga. But still, I'll try to be objective, and we'll go through what it actually does. So this is an allied web warrior character may spend 2 power to play this card. Choose an enemy character with the same name or alter ego as the character that played this card. The character that played this card gains the superpower shown below. Imposter Syndrome. When attacking the chosen character, the character that played this card can modify or reroll skull results and may reroll any number of dice. Okay, so this isn't as cool as I wanted it to be, because I was really hoping this was going to be the tactics card that said you're allowed to run multiple Peter Parkers or you're allowed to run multiple characters with the same name. That would have been cool. Unfortunately, it's not that. You get bonuses against enemy characters with the same name. It has to be a web warrior, so the only ones where this is going to come up are if you're playing against the exact same model, if you're playing Corebox Spider-Man against Miles Morales, or vice versa. or if you're playing any of the Peters against any of the Peters. Currently, oh, and the Gwens, either of the Gwens against either of the Gwens. So otherwise, you're just playing the same model, and that it works for that as well. And of course, it has to be a Web Warriors character. But as far as I can tell, oh, Shadowland Daredevil versus Daredevil. That's another one as well where this works. So in all of these situations, you'd be able to modify and reroll your skulls, which you probably already can because most of the time you're probably running Miles leadership. But then you can also reroll any number of dice, which is very good. Your consistency there goes way up. I'm disappointed because I was hoping this would be a way I could run multiple Peters together or multiple Gwens together, and God knows they would love to be able to run multiple Gwens together right now. Um, but in terms of kind of a fluffy card that gives you that kind of cool, hey, we're playing a mirror match here, so I'm gonna take this card and get a bunch of buffs against one of your models. That's kind of cool. I don't think that's bad necessarily. It's just a little underwhelming. I think as far as more competitive plays goes, you might occasionally see it as like a tool specifically for the mirror, but that's probably about it. And even then, I'm not 100% sure you're going to see this all that much because at the end of the day, half of it's already something in the leadership you're probably running in a more competitive sense. And then the reroll any number of dice is good, but it's nothing insane. So yeah, it's solid. It's just I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing. One thing that's nice about it is it does last the entire game, so that's kind of cool. You can play it, pretty much right at the start of the game if you wanted. I mean, you need 2 power, but otherwise, right at the start of the game, and then basically screw that model in particular with one of your models in particular for the entire game. So that's kind of cool. Or you could get the weird situation where they're running either of the Peter Parkers and they're running Miles leadership, and you play this on Miles. Oh no, that doesn't work. It would only work if you were running Corebox Spidey, actually. So if either side is running Corebox Spidey, you can get this as a benefit against both the opposing Corebox Spidey, any other Spider-Man they have, and Miles, because they have the same name. They're both just Spider-Man. So that's kind of cool, but I don't know if that's all that good. So it's a niche thing, but it's neat. So that's going to be it for the non-character cards. There are 2 more character cards. I realized I messed up at the beginning. I totally said there was only 7 reveals here, but there was 8 revealed cards. So we're going to go ahead and look at those other 2 now. So the first one here is Rejuvenation. This is Vulture's tactics card. Vulture may play this card during his activation. Him and all allied characters within range 2 of Vulture remove all special conditions from themselves. Very, very simple card. I think it's solid at the very least. Being able to remove conditions is nice. A lot of affiliations don't have the best access to that. As someone who plays Steve Vengers primarily, it definitely hurts sometimes to see some of those staggers being tossed around and things like that. I just can't get rid of very easily. I have learned from cards like Battle Plan that it being during his activation is definitely a big drawback, but his doesn't cost any power, and that's a huge benefit to this card. It does have to be within range 2, and it is only conditioned, so obviously it doesn't have that kind of versatility. But still, I think it's a solid card if you know you're going up against a list that's going to be throwing out some really annoying conditions, whether that's, you're expecting a bunch of roots or a bunch of staggers or something like that. Definitely a solid card to consider. I don't know if it's the best card in the world or anything like that, but if you're running Vulture anyways, I think it's definitely worth thinking about. So yeah, I think it's a solid card. Good thing for him to have in his toolkit. And the last one here is Static Arc. This requires Sandman and Electro, as well as up to 2 Sand constructs on the board, but you probably want at least 1 for this. If Sandman and all allied Sand constructs are within range 5 of each other, Sandman and Electro may spend 1 power each to play this card. So note that this does not care where on the board Electro is, it just cares about how close Sandman is to his Sand constructs. And I'm pretty sure the Sand constructs dissolve if they go more than range 3 or something away from Sandman. Anyways, it's been a minute since I looked at his card, but still, you're probably hitting that criteria a lot of the time. So then you draw a line between each allied sand construct, each other allied sand construct, and Sandman. Each enemy character overlapped by 1 or more of these lines just takes 1 damage and gains the shock special condition. So this one's kind of cool. There's been a lot of discussion already in the Discords and things like that about what kind of defines a line. Is it perfectly thin? Is it middle of base to middle of base, or any point of base to any point of base? Is it like a beam where it's as thick as a beam and could hit multiple models that way? There's been a lot of those types of discussions, and we'll see if that kind of gets a clear final ruling once this card actually releases. But I think either way, it's pretty easy to kind of visualize how this might work. And I think we can go with kind of the weakest definition for assumption's sake of just kind of middle of base to middle of base, one straight line of, extremely and infinitely thin. So, you're only hitting models if they both happen to be in that line. You're not going to have it be thick enough to maybe clip things that are outside of that. Um, I think that's kind of the way to play it until we have official rulings at least. But yeah, I think this is probably a pretty solid card. I mean, guaranteed shock, guaranteed damage. This could be a great way, even on just like Sandman's activation or something like that. You can set this up, and then if you fail to kill something with your attacks, pop the card to get that last damage, or just kind of have it set up on Sandman's turn, and then when somebody else's turn comes around and they leave someone on one health, again, pop it to get that one damage in, because it doesn't have to be played on Sandman or Electro's turn, you just have to be the active player. So there's a few interesting ways you could use this card. I think it's probably pretty solid. I obviously will have to see it in play before I can give a 100% ruling on it. But yeah, I think it's a solid card. I think it's interesting. It's kind of fluffy. It's cool. I like this card. I don't really have any problems with it. We'll see how strong it actually is when it shakes out. Right now, I'm kind of reading it. I'm like, that seems pretty solid, but not overpowered. I definitely don't think. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the strongest card we've ever seen, or maybe it completely sucks and nobody will ever run it. Who knows? But that is the last card as far as I am aware. So yeah, we have a really interesting set of cards coming out here. I mean, all of these new Spider Foes cards are looking really, really interesting. Surprise Webhead and Strategic Retreat definitely stand out to me as some of the stronger ones that we're seeing. I think they're both really, really good. Founding Members is cool. It's fluffy. I love it. Vulture's card is neat. I like the Web Warriors cards. Well, I like one of them a lot. Clone Saga, I'm going to be bitter about because I still can't run multiple Peter Parkers or Gwen Stacy's. But um, I really like a lot of the things that they've shown here. I think these cards are really cool. I think for the most part, these cards are fairly well balanced. Even the ones that I think are on the stronger end, like Strategic Retreat, it's got a lot of power cost to it. It's going to be somewhat telegraphed. So I think, it's a great card, very, very good card, but I don't think it's broken. And Surprise Webhead certainly isn't broken, being the weakest of this type of effect we've seen so far that I can tell. Um, so yeah, I think they did a good job with these. They made them thematic. They made them feel like spider foes, and yeah, I think they hit the nail on the head with these. Honestly, this wave of releases, I've been very very happy with. There's a couple things I wish had been a little better, like the threat levels. I think could have been a little bit more spread out on the 4 pack that we're getting. I would have liked to see either Electro or Sandman as a 5, and probably Shocker or Vulture as a 2, just to give Spider Foes something in the 2 and 5 category, because I'm pretty sure their entire affiliation is 3s and 4s. So that would have been nice to see, but it's not the end of the world. I think thematically they hit most of these characters very, very well. I think these cards all feel really good as well. So yeah, I don't really have many complaints about this wave. I think there's some really good things coming here, and I'm excited to see them. I'll hopefully be picking some of them up relatively soon, depending when they actually become available in Canada, because at time of recording, we're just starting to get the X-Men in, which is wild. Um, so yeah, we'll see when these guys actually show up, because I'd love to be able to get them on the table for battle reports and stuff like that. I do have a couple 3D prints of them that I might be able to throw down. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video though, talking about the cards and things like that. So let me know what you guys think. Are you guys happy with this new wave of cards? Do you think they're underpowered, overpowered, anything like that? Would you like to see some different things? Are you as upset as I am about Clone Saga not being what I wanted it to be? Or did you have your own ideas for what some cards like that could be? One of the really disappointing things, I'm just gonna harp on Clone Saga a little bit more, is that it doesn't actually do much for Ben Riley, because he's Scarlet Spider Ben Riley, and nobody else shares either of those things, so it only matters if you have Ben Riley against Ben Riley, which is just kind of weird and a little anti-flavor, but I still think it's a neat card. Was disappointed when I heard the name, got excited, and then read the card. Um, but yeah, that is going to do it for my thoughts on this one. Before I complain about that card more, I do think everything else coming here is really, really cool. I'd love to know what you guys think down below, so do let me know. I'm very curious to see that. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do reveal videos like this all the time. We usually get it same day, if not next day, like this one. We also do character spotlights and things like that on Wednesdays, and we have battle reports every Sunday. So if you like any of those things, feel free to jump on in. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. So until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.